We are going to talk about healthcare, India's primary sector. Healthcare in India started late 90s only. Why? Because migration is happening at all levels because people feel that opportunities are present everywhere. These are all countries which have high potential in terms of income, but they need a lot of labor. Good morning and welcome to the second session of Human Capital Formation. The session is going to be very interesting, as in the previous we were talking about what is the essential factors that really drive the human capital formation in our country. So moving forward, just let's have a look into what are the topics that we are going to cover for today. We are going to talk about healthcare, India's primary sector, a very emerging sector and also the most happening sector in terms of economic development. The employment factors, that this is going to be quite a challenging thing that we are going to look into. Labor and human capital, quite obvious and important for the development. And the last factor, that's the human capital and the economic growth. So in this session, we are going to connect the different factors of economic development and see how does the human capital truly leads into a well-developed, a well-defined economic development of the nation. So moving forward, healthcare and the most important factor for any economic development. Preventive medicine, we are going to talk about this in a short while, but before we start talking about the preventive medicine and vaccination, we need to understand that healthcare in India started late 90s only. Why? Because primarily we were not a healthcare driven nation. We always believed that healthcare is something like a gift that is being given by our ancestors. So we did not take any extra efforts in terms of understanding the healthcare, in terms of making a separate effort in getting towards the healthcare. But then after the 1990s, we made it a mandatory course. Why? Because we wanted every one of us to get into vaccination, curative medicine. We wanted to get into the medical intervention, social medicine, by understanding the every single factor that is needed to cure a human being. So what we wanted here is that the healthcare to be more about friendly to the human being rather than just being an hospitalized outlook. So we wanted healthcare to be accessible, easy, and also in terms of understandable to the human being. So the various forms of healthcare expenditure comes to us in forms of vaccination, curative medicine, preventive medicine, or we are looking into all forms of medicinal factors that actually help us to live a healthy life. Secondly, healthcare expenditure directly increases with the supply of the healthy labor and force, and that it's a source of the human capital formation. So more the healthy people in our nation, more the people are doing physically well, it automatically contributes to the development of the nation. This is a very important factor. So for every single nation, the amount that is being invested in terms of healthcare, in terms of the expenditure matter, really comes to us handy, and this is very much important for the development of the nation. Now, moving forward, healthcare. Firms spend on giving on-the-job training to their workers. Definitely, yes. Why? Because they want to understand here is that there are some kinds of factor where healthcare will be given as an on-job training. So there are many factors that you need to start understanding in healthcare, where there are taken different forms, where different kind of training, where different kinds of factors are being embossed into it, and they are being done under the supervision of people. So when the workers are taken into the organization after the health checkup, they are being put on-job training, where they are taken under the supervision of people and they are being made to undergo the training by themselves. That is a very important formation altogether. There is another kind of job training that is also given, where you have to do under the supervision of somebody else, or you are put under some rules. In both of these cases, there are some expenses that are happening, both on in-job training as well as on the on-job training. Why is this expenses happening altogether? Because of the human human capital formation that is needed in order to get better productivity, better skill sets altogether. You need to put expenses, you need to invest on human being, and that can be done only when you have people with the best health conditions. So whatever kind of training that we are speaking about in industries these days, whether that's going to be a normal healthcare or that's going to be something in terms of building up a better healthcare notion, all these factors are contributed directly to the development of healthcare, directly to the development of human welfare altogether. So all these factors will definitely help us to do better in terms of human capital formation. Now, moving forward, expenditure regarding the on-job training is also a source of human capital formation. Why? Because these expenditure actually help in the labor productivity. Now, I always link the word labor productivity to healthcare. Why? Because unless and until an employee is on the pink of his health, unless and until the employee is able to contribute because of his physical well-being, he will not be able to increase the productivity of the company or of the nation. So at some point of time, healthcare is the direct contact, healthcare is the direct center which we need to invest in order to increase the training factor, in order to make the employee a better skilled personality altogether. So any kind of expenditure, any kind of investment that is made on healthcare is a direct reflection towards productivity. It's a direct reflection towards the working arena altogether. Now, moving forward, what are the employment factors that we are going to see here? The employment factors are people migrating from place to place in search of job for higher salaries. This is a very, very common factor that you can see in India. People migrate from the villages to the cities in search of job. Not only in search of job, because the jobs are highly paid in cities. That's what they believe. And the factor here is that the reason for migration, the reason for movement is also because of the living conditions that a city can provide in comparison to a rural area. So unemployment is the reason for the rural migration in India. We need to understand this. Why? Because human capital formation tells us that wherever a human being is present, let's say that you are a part of your native village, the village should be self-sufficient so that it is able to provide job, it is able to contain people there and grow. So we are talking about the self-sufficiency factor. But in India, what happens is that the rural sector is not able to contribute to the direct employment, because of which what happens? People tend to migrate from the towns and villages to the city. So this is quite obvious here that unemployment is a direct cause for the migration altogether. From there, technically, if you see, the qualified persons like an engineer, doctor, they start migrating to other country for higher salaries. Now, when you see the migration, it happens in different phases and different levels. A village migration, that is normally an unskilled labor, will try to migrate into city trying to look for a job. A skilled person will migrate from a town to city looking out for a better opportunity for his qualification. For a person who is highly qualified, like a doctor, like an engineer, like a lawyer or an auditor, will try to migrate from country to country because he believes that for the same occupation, for the same set of qualification, he can earn more money in abroad when compared to India. So now what is happening is that migration is happening at all levels because people feel that opportunities are present everywhere. So that is what is very, very important that we need to understand. Unless and until you are able to create an employment opportunity, you are able to understand the right skill and provide the right kind of job and opportunity, you will not be able to contain the human formation, you will not be able to develop it further. So that is why technically the migration happens at all levels. The next thing, migration in both of these cases involve the cost of transport, cost of living, the higher standards and the mental psychic understanding altogether. So there are a lot of socio-cultural factors also which I would like to involve here. Moment people think that if I'm going to migrate from India to US, India to UK or to France or to Germany or Japan or any other country in the world, there's a psychological feeling that sets inside the mind of the person saying that there is a better standard of living, there is a better way of approach to the job, the people are better, the social setup is better. So automatically what we are trying to say here is that the human capital foundation has got a lot of understanding, lot of link in terms of psychology. So moment you are able to psychologically make the people understand, the citizens understand the opportunities, the growth factors and the linking in terms of economic development, the migration can be restricted in India. So that is why migration is also a very big problem that actually causes, that actually creates a very big challenge in terms of economic development. Now, moving forward. Now, we are also going to talk about this factor in terms of employment, about the enhanced earnings in the new place that outweigh the cost of migration. Now, people think that when I work in India as a software engineer, probably I can get a salary worth about 50,000, 60,000 or 70,000. But if I try the same job in US, I might be earning 10 times more or 12 times more. So now what is happening here is that though the cost of living in United States is definitely higher on comparison in terms of dollars versus rupee, but still the amount of money which I'm earning in United States will make me more pleased, will make me more viable to stay there because I'm being paid so high. So I don't mind about paying for that cost of living. I'm happy with that higher end of cost of living. So the concept of enhanced earnings, the concept of money definitely drives the human capital formation. More the money, more the opportunity, people do not mind about paying for that cost of living. They're happy. They are ready to pay for that big kind of cost of living. They are ready to go in for that costlier way of living altogether. People also spend money to acquire information relating to the labor market. Now, this is quite interesting. Why? Because with the recent advent of social media coming into picture, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, all these kind of social media coming into picture, what is becoming very interesting is that the concept of information itself. Information does not come to you free. Now, that is a very, very open and accepted truth. But moment information is being circulated everywhere, people find information, people find data everywhere, automatically that becomes the most valuable possession that a man can hold. So what happens here is that people start searching for job. People start searching everywhere where they want to see, where they want to develop, where they want to approach and find out an opportunity that can be the best for them. So that is why I would say that the money that people are spending in terms of acquiring information, in terms of skilling themselves, in terms of upskilling, in terms of going forward is definitely a positive cost for development. So that is always there in terms of education and in terms of healthcare altogether. Similarly, now for example, if you start looking, people who want to know the levels of salaries that are associated with various types of job. Now here, I would like to relate this entire concept with a very, very simple example. There is a website called as glassdoor.com. Now, when you go through this website, you will be able to link the salary to the kind of job. Now, for example, I want to know how much money or how much salary is earned by a software engineer who specializes on networking. Glassdoor will give you a comparative salary structure about all the companies that are working in networking. Similarly, for a finance, for a marketing, for a HR, for all kinds of profession. Now, why that is needed if you start understanding in human capital is that for every educational institution and for the qualification that you possess, People who are investing in education want to see a return out of it. So when I put in my effort to become a chartered accountant, an engineer, or a doctor, or a lawyer from some top institutions in this world, I immediately want to calculate the outcome of the educational value. So I want to see that with the educational qualification that I possess, what can I do for the world? What can I really take it forward in terms of growth and development? I want to see my potential value in terms of earning when I compare myself with others present in the same qualification. So that is why human capital formation has got a lot of link to the employment factor, because more you get employed, more constructively, more positively you get employed, where you are able to get the best pay for the knowledge, for the education that you have got, definitely that will help in terms of development. So that is why people tend to migrate, people tend to attach themselves to those countries where there is a high earning potential. Now, moving forward, the labor and human capital. Now, labor and human capital are quite interlinked altogether. So, the information that is necessary to make decisions regarding investment in human capital as well as efficient acquisitions in terms of the human capital stock. Now, labor and human capital are not two different factors, though distinctively we use those words. But if you start seeing here, they are basically the factors that contribute for the human capital. This information is necessary to make decisions regarding the human capital, because we are considering the human like the stock. They are needed in terms of investment, they are needed in terms of growth. So expenditure acquired in terms of acquiring the information relating to the labor market. Where do you get the best skill? Now, for example, here I would like to give you the concept of outsourcing. Way back in the year 96-97, when India opened its door for outsourcing, for the BPO, business process outsourcing market, people were actually trying to find out where they can get skilled labor at a cheaper cost. And the answer to that was none other than our great country, India. Why? Because we had a lot of youngsters who were capable of speaking, reading, and writing English. So we were a country which were multilinguistic, and we had the capacity to learn a foreign language. Automatically, the US companies and UK companies wanted to invest in India in the outsourcing, in the form of call center, in the form of data centers, in the form of processing, because they felt that there is an availability of huge labor that is available at a cheaper cost, and also they are intellectually potential. So that is why people spend a lot of money, countries do spend a lot of money in trying to find out, in trying to understand where there is potential labor. And people want to tap into that labor market and develop with it. Now, another example which I would like to say here is that the Middle East, countries like Dubai, countries like Oman, countries like Abu Dhabi, and all those places, when you go in the Middle East countries, especially like Saudi Arabia and all, these are all countries which have high potential in terms of income, but they need a lot of labor, because they need a lot of skilled, semi-skilled and unskilled laborers who can run their country. So that becomes a potential labor market in terms of tapping the opportunities to work. So what these countries do is that they afford visas, they give visas to people from other origins to make them come to their country and work, and they are paid heavily for that. So this is how you see that there's a lot of expenditure that is incurred in terms of acquiring the labor, in terms of maintaining the labor, and also growing with them. But yes, this is a positive cost, this is for a positive benefit, and this needs to happen for the economic development altogether. Now, moving forward, we are also, in terms of understanding the factor that when we are talking about the human capital growth, when we are talking about the economic growth altogether, we need to know that the labor skill of an uneducated or an educated person that we are going to talk about is of a high value. And the educated versus the uneducated is always a matter of fact that we need to look upon. More the education, more the literacy, automatically it helps in terms of development altogether. That is why we say that economic growth means increasing in the real national income, which will occur only because of the contribution of an educated person. It is not just going to happen because of physical assets, land, or any other value. It is going to happen because of a physical asset altogether. A healthy person can definitely provide some uninterrupted growth altogether, and that will be of a great value. That will actually importantly give a lot of specifications, growth altogether. If the health is being maintained, then automatically that is a direct contribution to the economic growth. So even in case of migration, even in case of change in labor market, it becomes highly important for all of us to see here that when we start thinking about the human economic growth, when we start thinking about the development progress altogether, this concept of human capital formation is a direct link to the economic growth. Now, moving forward, with this, we come to the conclusion for today's session. I hope and believe that the session was interesting, informative, and educative. In the next session, we will see about the different factors of education, the different concepts of human capital formation. Until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today.